Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast. And I am Emmett Muckles. You can find the podcast on emmettmuckles.com, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, anywhere you find podcasts. Now, here's what I need you guys to do because, the audience is really growing and I really want to find out where it's going and I want to find out who it's going to. So go to emmettmuckles.com/contact and just leave me a little message. You could just say, hey, I listened to it for 5 minutes and I turned it off, or I listened to the whole thing, or hey, Emmett, how you doing? Leave your name. I'll give you a shout out. If you don't want a shout out, say don't give me a shout out. But today I have a great friend of mine. I met him at Podcast Movement and he stood out. He was so statuesque. He was like a presence and he had this big, broad smile, and his name is Dr. Jarrett Patton. And he says, my man, we are going to work together. And I said, praise God. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show. Like, ever since we met that day at Podcast Movement, we knew it was going to be something great. And it all happens in the right time. So I'm happy we're here now, getting this show done, and this is only the beginning. And
this is a great inspiration. Your story is a great inspiration for those who are going through like some tribulation in their life or some problems, or they're having some issues. We always think that we have one path in life, and then life and God will say, nope, got something else planned for you. And you came up with a program, which is the License to Live, a career restart coaching program, which is a 3-month program, and you get to restart your career. You want to delve into how that came to be?
Absolutely. So when I was a kid, I always wanted to grow up and be a truck driver. And I would ride my bike around the neighborhood and just look at the big trucks rolling by and said, I want to do that. And not only did I want to be a truck driver, I wanted to be a Budweiser truck driver. So maybe you'll get sponsorship for the show or something like that. I don't know. However, I got older, and with time, I liked science, and that science led me to college. And through college at Xavier University of Louisiana, I decided that I wanted to go to medical school. And ultimately, I graduated Xavier, went on to Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, and fell in love with taking care of children. And that I knew was my calling from that point on. So I ultimately finished my pediatric residency at NYU and Bellevue and went off to take care of kids. And I typically wanted to take care of them in underserved neighborhoods and take care of kids in a way that we could take care of the families, the kids, and everything else. So my career was off to a great start, and I loved what I did. And it was taking care of the Smith family and the Jones family and taking care of all their problems that they had coming through. However, with time, they noticed my leadership skills were pretty great as well. So I ultimately did medical directorship over a pretty large clinic that had a few satellite sites and kind of moved up the chain. And I made it all the way to the president of the medical staff of an 8-hospital system.
Wow.
So I still was seeing patients, some, but I was also making changes in healthcare for the masses. And I really, at that point in my career, thought I was doing exactly what I was called to do. And I loved every moment of it.
So how many years in do you have, did it take for you to reach this point from your start to college to where you've reached your pinnacle?
Yes, it was the start of college all the way to that pinnacle was just about 20 years.
Wow, that's a lot of time.
Yeah, so I put in 20 years worth of studying and refining my craft. and getting all the way kind of moving up that corporate ladder. So I really was blessed and loved what I did.
So from there, your life took a pivotal change. And out of that change, one of the things was License to Live, which was your book that you had written. And I received a copy of it, and it was self-explanatory. But either you're going to have to get a little bit from you, or you're going to have to get the book, which you can get at drjarrett.com.
Absolutely. The book will give you some of the story, but I'll gladly tell you the rest. So things were going as usual until one day I happened to have a meeting with the hospital attorney that I had meetings with quite frequently. And he just kind of looked at me across the table, and he had an anguished look on his face. And he said, "Jarrett, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're under investigation."
Oh, that's hard to hear anywhere.
Absolutely. So I'm at the top of this institution. I'm a board of trustee member. I'm trying to figure out where on earth could I be under investigation? Who else is under investigation? What's going on?
Yeah.
He started showing me pictures of a woman, and he showed me a Facebook picture. And I said, well, I don't know who she is. I'm not on Facebook either. And he showed me another picture and another picture. And I said, I don't know who she is. And he said, well, turns out you saw her with her 9-month-old son about 3 weeks ago. And she's claiming that you were sexually inappropriate with her while you were examining her 9-month-old son.
Wait. You were hold on. That doesn't make any sense. You were sexually inappropriate with the woman while you were seeing her son as a physician.
Absolutely. And just as you were confused, I was extremely confused. And he brought it up because she had made a complaint to the hospital and said she was going to the police because she wanted to file charges against me based on that encounter and that exam. So I was crushed. I had no idea what was going on. I couldn't even recall the incident. I couldn't recall the woman. And I was just kind of left alone at that point.
Yeah.
And one thing led to the other. And ultimately, the hospital did their investigation, but said they would leave it in the hands of the police. The police ultimately did their investigation after a few months, and they decided they were just going to press charges, and they charged me with indecent assault.
I don't know what that means, but I'm not in the legal system either.
Well, I didn't know what it meant either, but it's just a misdemeanor crime that you can be charged with, and it doesn't have a specific definition, but I guess it fit the bill of what this woman was describing.
Okay.
With whatever her story was as regarding this exam. So I was crushed. I ultimately get these charges. There was a media frenzy. And of course, with a media frenzy, people chasing down me, my neighbors, my family members, disrupting my kids' life. All of these things came about, and at the end of the day, the medical boards, they caught wind of the story. They were at my house the next day saying, "Oh, we're here to take your license." And I said, "But wait, I didn't do anything."
Wait, is this before you've been tried? So your license was removed from you before you went to any kind of legal precedents or actions?
Absolutely. The charges and the arrest that ensued actually was enough. And in the medical system and in many systems, you're actually guilty until you can prove yourself innocent.
And that's just the opposite of what they tell you.
That's just the opposite of what you're told and what you grow up thinking. And for me, I've always been avoidant of the legal system. So I knew the system wasn't perfect. I knew the system was the only system that we had. And I vowed to just stay away from it. But I was brought into this whirlwind of accusation, and it ultimately made me lose my job, my medical licenses, and everything I'd worked so hard for. Finally,
I can see recalling this is difficult.
It's always a difficult story. And whenever I'm speaking on stages, in fact, I was just in Atlanta last week and spoke a couple of times, and it still brings up fresh emotion because it's a very difficult time in my life. And just knowing how much credibility, how much of my medical license, how much of everything I lost, including my job, it was just a tremendous time for my family, for me, as we plowed through this. I had yet to make a statement to anyone other than this is ridiculous. And months and months and months rolled by. Ultimately, about a year after these charges were brought, the medical board conducted their investigation, and I just get a letter in the mail saying you can reinstate your licenses without restriction. And I said, well, that's a small victory, a year into this thing, sitting at home, being unemployed, being unemployable.
Right.
And just having really the worst part of my life going through this trial. So I had my medical licenses back, and I wasn't even able to use them.
So you couldn't practice at all?
No, I still had criminal charges hanging over my head. And if I was going to do anything, I knew I would have to do something myself. And part of that is the reason I started my company, Dr. Jarrett, PLLC, and drjarrett.com, because I knew during all of this time there was so much drama around my life, I was going to have to rebuild it myself. So I leaned on my faith, looked to God, looked to my wife, looked to my kids, and said, we're going to make it through this thing. And ultimately, at about 16 months after the initial incident, I had my day in court. And it was pretty quickly apparent to the jury that this was all a hoax and a setup, and there was nothing to it. So they saw my innocence, and I left the courtroom that day, and people act like everything was just put back together and everything was made whole. But it was anything but.
But you were tried in the court of public opinion.
Yes. From the day that accusation was made, I was being tried and convicted and probably even hung in the court of public opinion, and couldn't even make a statement for myself until ultimately the criminal trial, which was about 16, 17 months down the road.
But, we live in a different time, and it is seriously different. And I like to talk, I always go back to the Bible, and I think about the times we live in now when they say A will be Z and Z will be A. And we have to prepare ourselves for anything that may happen. But you were able to rebound from that. I mean, a different path was shown to you.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Emmett. And that path really was ultimately a path of freedom. I knew that after that happened, I was going to be very hesitant to going right back to the job that I had. I suffered a lot of trauma from this incident.
I bet.
And I knew I needed more time to heal, even after all the proceedings were done. So as I continued to do research and I chronicled a lot of my story and what was going on, and I knew that this type of thing happens to a lot of people. And it may not be a very high profile case like mine was, because I'm a physician and was a board of trustee and a senior physician executive. But people's lives can get destroyed on this time and time again. And there's not a stage I speak on where someone comes up to me afterwards and said this happened to them.
Really?
Or they know something that happened similar to someone else. And even recently, someone told me, you know what? I hear your story and I completely believe you because my sister lied on someone just like you were lied on.
Wow. Wow.
And this is finally how I wrote the book, Licensed to Live, and started a coaching program because I realized there's a need for people to do some healing. And as things in life happen, it may not be as dramatic as my story, but sometimes you may want to quit a job, but sometimes that job quits you. And the damage and the trauma.
That was a good one. You need to trademark that.
I might work on that.
You need to trademark that one.
But it really is. Sometimes you quit a job, but sometimes the job quits you. And for me, after my job quit me, I knew I could do a lot more to help people in another way. And that actually led me towards walking a trip towards that billionaire lifestyle that you talk about every time on your show.
Because this is going to hit home with many people on many levels. And I'm not talking about what you went through, but I'm talking about the aftermath, what you did to rebuild. Because if you've gone through this, even though you were a physician, you were probably financially strapped. You still had these responsibilities. Your family had a lifestyle that they were used to. You're the man of the family. So, I hate to say it, but the predominance of men in a family, your role is to protect and provide. I don't care what anyone says. I hate to say it because women have a lot of power. They can literally bring a child into this life. They can feed a child with its body. So they have some other aspects that we just don't. So we fall into our role. How did you come to build and from that situation, from dust to a mountain?
It's all about coming back and putting things in perspective. Yes, I was hurt. Yes, I was damaged. Yes, I was strapped for cash. All of those things are true. And I knew that at some point and at some level, I had to be a good example for my kids, because especially my two little boys that are still in the house, they need to understand how to deal with adversity. And all too often, when things get tough, people may fold up, they may quit, they may decide that it's just life just isn't worth living. And at this point, I knew, even though something very public, something very tragic happened in my career, that did not make me any less of a man than I was. So yes, my wife, she had to take over and she went back to work full time and she did everything she could to try to keep us going. And I'm super thankful for that. But I knew I had to set an example for my boys first and foremost, because I know that they will hit adversity in their life. And if they can see the example that I set in order to do something good for their life, then I know I'll be able to make something good out of a terrible situation.
So what was your brainstorm? Because in that moment, you can be really trying. You know what I'm saying? You're like, I need to do something, but what do I do? I need to be who I was meant to be, but what do I do? And that is the question that most people are having. I mean, I have it often. Like, what is the direction I'm supposed to go in? So how did you come to that conclusion of putting this all together?
Well, it was a process. It actually was a process, because I said, well, I know I'm very good with being a physician. I'm good at hospital administration. I knew a lot about health equity and health disparity. So I said, well, I could probably be a consultant. But I had trained all of my life to be a physician and not a businessman. So I knew a lot about how to be a physician, but I knew very little about being a businessman. So as I was going to conferences and trying to look for leads, I realized I just didn't know enough about business to do what I was doing. So I did look for help, and I did get coaching myself in order to help me understand the nuances of running a small business as opposed to running a $6 billion hospital system.
Yeah, that has like this system built in. All you have to do is make decisions.
Right.
You don't have to do marketing. Right. You don't have to do any of that. You just have to go, yes, we need more of those, and no, that program's done.
That's right. Absolutely right. So it was a very different perspective for me. However, with the coaching and the understanding, and even though we were financially strapped, I knew I had to double down and invest in myself. Just as I invested in college and invested in medical school, I needed to invest a little bit more into my own training. And that's what started to change the concept for me. And I realized that deep within my heart, knowing how many people suffer similar fates, and sometimes people don't even live through these fates because they may opt for something as drastic as suicide. And we see that with physicians a lot these days. Anywhere from estimates between 400 and 1,200 physicians die every year to suicide.
Wow.
People don't really hear about that kind of thing. So I knew I could be a resource for physicians and professionals who have been knocked around by any number of systems to find out how they could refresh, restart, and rebuild their lives after something dramatic may happen.
So how did you reach these people? How did you come together? Because like I said, you're trying and you don't know what's going to work. Well, you think you know what's going to work, but it might not quit. You know what I'm saying? It's trial and error. Was it trial and error for you, or did you, in a short period of time, find your niche?
Well, this is the interesting thing. So ironically, all of my downfall started with social media. And I was never on social media prior to that incident. So I just had no interest. There was no real need for it in my life. People say, "Oh, aren't you on Facebook or something?" Well, no, I wasn't. But I knew in order to reach people, this is just the way it is now. And so I had to learn social media. I had to learn how to reach people. And I was very public with my message. There is nothing different in me saying that something bad happened to me and be able to share that as a part of my own healing. And it actually helps others heal too, because they feel empowered and they feel like it may be okay to tell their story as well. Yeah.
So you found some coaches. I mean, you got coaching from someone else. And what was your time period to where you started to see traction, where you could go, this is viable. I can do this. This is happening.
It took a lot of groundwork, but putting in work day after day after day, which I had all the time in the world because I knew I wasn't going back to the hospital. I knew I wasn't going back to practice pediatrics. I knew I'd be able to focus on this every day. And with that time, it got up to about a year before I really started to see some results and some traction and things really starting to pick up.
So what's your main focus that you offer? If you and I are in an elevator and we're going up to the 5th floor, so we have about 30 seconds, what's your elevator speech?
So if you've ever been disengaged, dissatisfied, disenfranchised with your own job and your career, and perhaps even your life, it's time to refresh and restart your career. And you do this through a number of ways. You look at everything in perspective, number one, and you put everything in life in perspective. Job titles and jobs themselves are temporary. but look deep within your soul and find your purpose. And if you understand and can see what that purpose is, it will be easy to make a job and yet a career out of your purpose.
Bam. You should be my coach. I'm going to call you and be like, Doc, I need help. No, ladies and gentlemen, this is real, though, because, we're in a very serious time where everything can be literally stable in the moment, and the very next moment, life unravels and you have to build anew. And it doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 18 or you could be 81 and it could still happen. And we're living a lot longer now. So, one of the things I say is that time is changing, time is sped up. And lately, I have reaffirmed my Christianity. And I don't want to say Christianity, my relationship with Jesus and God. And he says that time will speed up. So when you come to these situations, you've got to have faith in yourself and faith in your higher being. Now, I don't want to put a face on your being, but you got to have faith and know that you can rebuild. And this is a prime example of it, where something traumatic can happen and you can come out on the other side and be sustainable. So how can people reach you?
People can find me on social media at Dr. Jarrett. Spell out the word doctor, J-A, 2 R's, E, 1 T, or drjarrett.com. Feel free to reach out to me. And you can also get Licensed to Live on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or drjarrett.com.
Dr. Jarrett, how tall are you?
6'5".
I thought so. I thought you were like 6'7". I was like, wow. I know you. But
excuse me, Emmett. I do have to reaffirm one of the statements you said about your faith, because your faith really will get you through. And my relationship with God and my Christian faith was, I felt on solid ground when all of this happened to me. But my eyes were opened throughout this time, and I could see things and hear things that I hadn't seen or felt before, because I was able to. I had been taken out of the grind of the daily office politics, and I could focus time and pitch a kickball game with my kids. I could enjoy the beauty of nature around me, and everything slowed down. But at the same time, just as you mentioned, time sped up.
Yep.
And when I left all of those problems up to God, that's when things started to change.
Ladies and gentlemen, you got to talk to Dr. Jarrett Patton. MD, what's the FAAP stand for?
Fellow of the Academy of American Pediatrics.
That's a lot of letters. It's like one of those
we
games.
tend to have way too many letters after our names in medicine. So
what's in store for, and I'm going to put it to you in a short time frame, which is 18 months. What is the vision for the next 18 months for you?
Well, continuing on with the Licensed to Live and the Licensed to Live coaching program is an absolute must, because there are a lot of people hurting out there that need help. However, I did recently write another book entitled Whose Badass Kids Are Those?
I see that.
And it's a parent's guide to better behavior for children of all ages. Although I don't practice pediatrics like I used to, I certainly still love to take care of children. And writing this book and conducting Whose Badass Kids Are Those boot camps online, and doing an online course, and all of these things that I do to help parents in their children's behavior is something that I still love to do. And I know that brand will also start to flourish. But I'll continue to be speaking. I'll continue to be coaching both parents and professionals. And I'll just continue to live the billionaire lifestyle, because once I get taken out of all of that rat race and all of that career, I can really focus on the important things in life.
Which is living.
Absolutely.
Well, I want to thank you so much for being on the Billionaire Lifestyle. This has been a joy. This has been over a year in the making. Has it been almost a year, right? Almost a year in the making. And, and I was just so taken aback when I met you because you reinforced me. I gave a talk at Podcast Movement and I didn't know how it was going to be received because I'm pretty much a character. And the response that I got was so fabulous that let me know I was on my path, or where my path is supposed to be. But remember this: you are a Hue, HUE -man made in the image of being. Hue is the color, image of having an experience. That's what life is. That's the billionaire lifestyle in an essence. You are on this planet. God put you here, bare to the world, and you prospered. You made it to this point. If you are listening to the sound of my voice, you have made it. Now you just have to have faith. And then what you have to do is take a step. Take one step. And then move the other foot. You don't see the next place your foot is going to land, but know that it is secure because you have security in this life if you have faith in God and yourself. Now, with that faith and love that you must develop for yourself and for the higher power, you must also see it for other people. Because that's where our strife in the world comes from. When we start saying, well, they have more than me and I'm not up to them and blah, 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 blah. No, it just is. It just is. Let be what is and go about you as you are. Till next time, love you all. Peace.